BookTok has gone too far. Starting as an innocent community to connect with other readers with similar book interests has now turned into a cesspool of overconsumption, people reading for an aesthetic look, and the downward spiral of fiending for spicy content. And today, I'm going to be having a deep discussion on the sudden rise of spicy content, the problems within the community, and the overall landscape of BookTok. So with all that being said, let's dive into BookTok. Contrary to popular belief, BookTok actually wasn't like this. Who would have thought, right? Like it's been tainted for so long that it feels like we don't even remember a time when it was actually normal. But back then, BookTok was actually normal. It was filled with genuine readers that were sharing book recommendations, that were just wanted to have a community of people just to talk about books. And a lot of the people, it felt like a lot of the books were genuine. It was real. It was the books that were being marketed and pushed out, they were actually held value, and it was more like fantasy, kind of more like fiction books, your normal type of books, honestly. But over the years, it has slowly turned into one of the most honestly just lustful, the dark romance, spicy type of content. That's all it's basically turned into, which is pretty ironic because you can pretty much say this with like any application within like the last X amount of years. Instagram is now turned into, you feel me, every application, everything is turned into something sexual. From BookTok being completely different from what it was way in the past, there are some problems that actually come up that more so have to do with the actual content itself, and I really want to dive into them because I think a lot of them, some of them are pretty nasty in terms of people leveraging things, and some of them is genuine. The first problem that I'm noticing, and this is more coming from an author standpoint, I'm not personally one, but just from what I've seen, is that it's harder and harder to get your book out on TikTok. No, BookTok specifically. But what I mean by that is because now, pretty much people are just looking for the spiciest content ever, and they're not even giving anything else a chance. It's getting harder and harder to really get your book out there and for it to be an actual, like for it to stick in the community and for people to want to buy it. Sure, am I saying that you can't get a sale whatsoever, that no one is going to buy your book if you implement the proper marketing strategy? No, of course there's going to be people who are still going to buy your book, but this is going to be at a less clip because, like I said, everyone's looking for a specific type of content now. And let's just be real, it's almost kind of like any other app, in a sense where, like, if your content is not aligned with that little part of it, right, if your content is not aligned with it, it's going to be much harder. At the very least, at least when you do gain people that actually do want to read your book, it's more genuine as opposed to just getting people to buy your book because of the actual hype itself. And this is prevalent because especially now with like BookTok influencers, right, just like with pretty much anything else, any other product that you have to sell, a good strategy, a prominent thing that we see is you give away your product, right? You give away your product to influencers, most likely for free, right? And you basically tell them to review it depending on what the subject is, whether it's clothing. We see this a lot in the clothing industry, and just anything that you really want to sell as a business, right? And the problem that I see with this is if you get book talkers that are primarily just talking about the most popular books and not genuine books that they want to read themselves, right? Or they know that the audience isn't going to like, and you as an author spend X amount of money, maybe even out of pocket in some cases, right? If you're first starting off, you're spending X amount of money giving, the influencer, can you read my book and talk about it, right? In a positive light. The problem with that obviously is, for one, how do you even know they're going to read a book, right? A book is much different from like a clothing where you just wear it. So you pretty much have these people who might not even read your book. They might not even like your book, right? They might read it, but they don't like it, or they don't even like it and read it at the same time, right? And now you're out of money. Now you pretty much got a faulty review from someone who doesn't even know, right? Kind of like that LeBron meme when he was reading the Malcolm X book and like, he didn't really read it. It's kind of like that where you're just going to get like some poor review of it because, all these BookTok influencers, not all of them, I should say, not all of them, but a lot of them are just more so talking about the most popular books. Now it's more so about marketing these type of books instead of genuine, authentic books as it once was. Another problem that I see, and this has to do with more so the actual content within the book, is the common tropes that we see right now. A lot of them, let's be real, is dark romance, right? I'm gonna say dark romance, but in general, romance is pretty much the main topic that sells, especially in this industry. But the content itself, like I said, it's a lot of common tropes, too many to where it just ruins the plot, right? It's pretty much like your typical friends to lovers, enemies to lovers, those type of tropes. And while I think that it's nothing wrong particularly with actually, using those tropes, it's about kind of using it as more so of a guideline when you're actually, making your book, you're crafting your story, as opposed to making that the only thing, like essentially making that the whole personality of the book, right? Because now you have cliche, predictable endings, and honestly even just scenes in general within the book. You don't really build an emotional connection if you're killing off characters, or a character is gonna, disappear here, whatever circumstances happens, right? It's going to be harder to build a authentic, true emotional connection to the story and to the characters, because now, I mean, it's cliche, right? We've seen this before. You're pretty much forcing the plot to go in a one direction just because, okay, we explored this little section of the story, but they have to immediately become, enemies at first, right? And they got to go to lovers. So the process from going to there, from enemies to lovers, is pretty stiff, to say the least, right? It's pretty forced. You can pretty much tell that you feel me, just freaking Googled, how do I make this transition, right, to go from this to that, and they kind of copied it. We do see this a lot more in, especially like fan fiction, right? Oh my gosh, like Wattpad, I did a video on Wattpad. That was like a prevalent example of just, stereotypes being completely true in a lot of these stories. And even with, like I said, going on BookTok, it wasn't that much different. And like I said, the content itself of the book, I'm gonna be real, it wasn't it. Now, when I was talking about leveraging earlier, this is where it starts to get nasty, because obviously, like I said, this is a spicy area, right? And because people are just looking for spice, like they're fiending for it, bro. They're legitimately fiending for this. Because they are, guess what? Now people will leverage like trigger warnings. Generally, there's trigger warnings in books, especially like dark romance. It could have abuse and, just manipulate, just toxic, right? Toxicity all over the place in that book, in the story rather. And because, trigger warnings are generally used as a good measurement, right? To warn others, hey, if you're easily triggered by this, don't read it. But the way they're kind of sneaky with it is that they leverage it. They use this as more so of an enticing, like a hook, right? Hook, line, and sinker. And they get the viewer who's just, like I said, they're fiending for that freaking spice, right? They're just going on their For You page looking for the new spiciest book to top the one they read earlier. And they use, like I said, these trigger warnings. The creators, they use these trigger warnings as a leverage to essentially sell their book. Like I said, it's pretty nasty because, as I'm going to touch on later in the video, there's actual people who, went through these things, and, for it to be used as a marketing scheme, a marketing tactic and whatnot, it's pretty nasty. And with obviously trigger warnings being used and the lines being blurred there, another section to where the lines are being blurred at, and let's just be real, right? This is probably going to be the main highlight of the video, right? Dark romance. All right, there's a reason I've been putting quotation dark romance. All right, the reason why is because I think we're getting the lines blurred of what actual, like come on, bro, how is this actually dark romance? You're telling me that, all of this toxic manipulation and abuse and essay and, steps, right? Like we're seeing a lot of these like family dynamics. How is this dark romance? All right, there's hardly any romance in there. Let's just be real. There's hardly any romance. It's mainly just dark stuff. And, that it's just a lot of just off the wall stuff that is, are you sure this is dark romance? Is this really dark romance? I feel like this is just like a loose term that obviously book talkers use to attract more people and just the books and push out more books in general, because like I said, this is no way that this is really like romance, you know what I mean? Like what romance? And the sad thing about it is obviously now you have people like romanticizing these type of things in the books, right? Whether it's the abuse, whether it's the manipulation, the toxicity, right? It's pretty much just being glorified and like, oh, I want that. I remember seeing like a TikTok, like, you have permission to bite, scratch me, anything. Like, it was crazy. I'm like, bro, what? Are we seriously glorifying this when, like I said, it's pretty much like a slap in the face of the people who actually went through these things, and you're pretty much just making a TikTok about it in the comfort of your own home, just saying that I want these desires. Do you actually want these desires? Like, have you you know what I mean? Like, okay, we read the books. Sure, you read the books. That's all you pretty much read, right? So it's like, of course, you're flooding your mind with these type of thoughts. But is that something you genuinely want? All right, did you genuinely want that? Nah, in most cases, no. One of the problems that ties back to the whole thing is, like I said, the audience, right? A lot of the audience, like I said, while it is, it did start off as something pure and wholesome and all that, who was making up of this audience? It was young women, right? Young girls were running a lot of this, book talk early on and giving recommendations and, like I said, just having a wholesome time on book talk. But like I said, because now it's absolutely been tainted with so much spice and all this, not only are you putting spice in there, right, just in general, when it's like, all right, do we really spice, right? But the fact that the audience as well, it's literally just freaking teenagers, preteens, right? And like, come on, bro, like, there's young people right there, you feel me, that are subjected to this content. And like I said, they're being, because it's like the newest thing, right? It's pretty much the hottest thing on here. It's constantly going to get pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And a lot of the genuine real books of people who genuinely wanted to have real conversations about other type of books are going to get pushed away. They're going to get filtered out of the algorithm. They're just going to be harder and harder to come across because, like I said, they're going to be subjected to so much, spice, and eventually they might give in, right? They might be like, you know what, let me check some out of these popular books. I've seen, this book on my For You page 7 times while scrolling. So let me see what it's about. Let's see what the hype is, right? Let's be real. This is a disguise. All right, this is no different from, lustful videos, those type of videos. This is no different. Now, look, the barrier to entry is a little bit higher just in general because, okay, let's say you want to go the ethical route, right, of books. You pretty much have to buy the book physically, or you buy it like digitally, like a Kindle ebook and whatnot. Okay, cool, right? But you still are investing into that. Or you could just go the route of downloading the PDF file, an audiobook on YouTube, whatever. There's other forms of getting your books for free. But nonetheless, the barrier to entry, it's a little bit higher than, those type of videos, to where, let's be real. Obviously, videos being a main, driving force of just society nowadays, right? Like, and it's easier to just click on a video, see all the colors and stimulation, and then boom, you get addicted to it. But you can still get addicted to these books and the content inside of it, because at the end of the day, right, you're trying to get that dopamine rush, right? I've seen comments of people talking about, I've read this, book, and it has so much spice in every chapter that there's just no way I can go back to a normal romance book or even a normal dark romance book, right? And this is scary because it's the same thing of like an addiction, pretty much, right? Of like, you first start off, heck, put this in the context, obviously we're talking about book talk, but put this in the context of any other situation you've been in, right? Whatever you first started off as, so you might have started off reading normal romance books or normal, light, dark romance type of books. And then, you go and read books for like 6, 7, 8 months, genuinely reading them. And then you look at what you're reading now, right? And then you see the two, right? And you see the middle, the journey you took to get there, and just seeing how nasty. And if you were to read this content out loud, you would be absolutely flabbergasted at yourself. You would get looked at as probably a weirdo. All right, let's just keep it a buck. Let's just genuinely keep it a buck. You'd get looked at a little bit strangely if you were to genuinely see what you started off as versus what you're reading now. And this gap right here, right in the middle, it's like, okay, how can you not recognize, right? Because obviously, like I said, you read the spice books, you want some more spice. So what do? You hunt for this spice, right? You keep hunting for this spice, so you just want this dopamine rush. You keep, going down the rabbit hole of looking for more spice and spice and spice until eventually, heck, maybe you might even create your own spice, right? Like I said, I brought up Wattpad, right? Fan fiction, all this and that, right? These are things that you can use, to inspire you to maybe even create your own spice. And, a lot of the content, while a lot don't want to admit it, right, it can get nastier and nastier and nastier. And eventually, you might write something, or you might even read something that is like, you didn't even get it from the For You page at this point. You freaking found it on like an old forum, right? You found an old forum from like 2007 about this, this dark romance book. And it's just the most gruesome, just weird content, and it sucks because, I feel like a lot of the people we see, we've seen some videos now of people pushing back on a lot of the, mature content on BookTok, right? You might see like a clip of like a husband or the boyfriend, reading the book, showing my husband, what I'm reading. And, the husband's like, oh my God, like this is kind of, weird, this book is weird and all that, right? And it's like, okay, you get this kind of half-hearted, serious tone. Oh my gosh, like, come on, babe, what are you reading, right? But it's not like serious, right? Like he's still kind of smiling all this. Nah, like what are you actually reading, right? Like if you had a partner who's reading a lot of this, what are we doing now? I gotta lie, like it's a little and like I was talking about earlier, where how you start to normalize it, it starts to become something that you actually desire. Nowadays, you'll start recognizing that when you're, even just in your real life, this will start to manifest. All of a sudden now, your perceptions on romance and what you actually want, right? Like I said, you're going to review normal romance, whether it's even in a freaking movie or and all that, but especially books. You're going to be like, bro, this is too boring. Like there's nothing here. This is too boring. This is not stimulating enough. And you're going to start desiring this, right? You're going to start maybe being more open to these desires. You know what? I'm actually open to, toxic habits and abuse and all of these things in a relationship. That's crazy. I mean, that's legitimately crazy to even get to that point, but it's real, right? And then, like I said, you mix this in with the actual audience who's consuming these books. And like I said, it's young girls, it's young, people reading these books. And you're pretty much just consistently feeding them these thoughts and these line of thinking and these kind of, idolizations of it. You might see an edit of a sad boy or an edit of, toxic habit. And it's like, oh, it looks so cool, right? Because I saw it in an edit. You saw the music, the cuts, you feel me? Like, nah, it's really not. It's really not. It's really not when you actually step away from the content itself. And like I said, just, retrain your brain, right? Just completely get off the content and retrain your brain now to rewire it to go back to normal. And like I said, because this is books, it's being looked at kind of a little bit differently as opposed to, those type of videos, right? Like I said, there's a higher, barrier entry to the books. And I feel like it's not being treated with the proper, respect. Like I said, in terms of like actually being able to go down this rabbit hole, and I think because of that and because it's being normalized, we're seeing this happen in more like real time of people genuinely getting like sucked into BookTok. Another problem that I have that honestly kind of just makes me chuckle at this point, it's not even something that I can even take serious, is people trying to make reading an aesthetic. Right now, reading in itself is absolutely beautiful. And the good thing that did come from BookTok, I will say, all right, even though now it's, like I said, it's kind of wonky right now, at least at the very least, it promotes reading. I definitely think that reading is a lost art nowadays. And if you can get more people to read, and especially read what they genuinely want to read instead of just the freaking spiciest book on the web, cool, that's absolutely dope. I'm glad that, this one thing came from it. But like I said, a problem that I have with it, and this goes with like a lot of things, is people trying to make it an aesthetic. You might see a video of someone in the room, perfectly white sheets. They got the freaking, AirPod Pros and listening to music. They got the MacBook with the timer and they're reading their book. It's just aesthetically pleasing to the eye, right? And you're like, oh, I want to do this. And you do it, right? And, you're like, all right, I'm gonna start reading. You start reading, and then, let's just be real, right? We know these type of people, right? Or it might even be you. I don't know. I don't know. But the people who, let's say you have a book, they'll take a picture of the book they're reading. They might take a little TikTok, a little, you feel me, post a little story, and they spend more time picking out the perfect track. They're putting in the hashtags, finding the perfect cover, and just the caption and everything, worrying about that content itself, instead of actually worrying about reading itself, right? Like, you spend more time on your phone than actually reading. And like I said, this just kind of makes me chuckle because we all know someone like this, right? This is not even just a BookTok thing, but just in general. But the fact that we're, the only reason why people are picking up a book, or who knows, right? We know with like that girl and, that guy aesthetic, right? We see a lot of productivity habits and all that being, put through the aesthetic, and, people wanting to do these things. It's one of these cases where, like, sure, someone is doing the actual habit itself, but what is the intention behind it? Are you actually picking up reading because you want to read, you want to gain value, you want to, maybe even escape a little bit, right? And like use this as a way to relax? Or are you doing it because you notice that this is the most aesthetically pleasing thing, right? Especially with like content creators, right? A lot of the reasons why like a lot of content creators will do a lot of the habits they do is because of an aesthetic, right? Let's say they're trying to fit a certain aesthetic. And I did talk about this in another, previous video about aesthetics. But basically, they'll start reading and it's like, all right, guys, I'm picking up reading now as a habit. But you're only picking up reading really because in this specific, soft girl era, right, reading is a part of the thing. My final point that I really want to end off on, and why exactly BookTok is dangerous. Now, this goes with a lot of just reading in general, is like I said, how I was talking about the last point, your intention, right? Even if, you're reading these books and all that, right, it can be used as a form of an escapism, obviously, as we know. Now, while I think there is a healthy amount of escapism, I'm not saying you can never escape from your reality, but obviously having a healthy amount. But one thing that I see a lot in this is that they essentially use these books as their fix. Let's say, for example, let's even take it to videos, right? This was something that I remember I experienced back in like 2022. Let's say you watch a video, a vlog of someone talking, right? Like the Vlog Squad, right? Back when that was, they were really popular. Let's say you would watch the Vlog Squad, that would essentially be your social fix for the day. If you really, let's say you didn't talk to anyone throughout the day, you watch the Vlog Squad, and now, it feels like you're in the moment, right? It feels like you're with them. You're actually in the moment, with David Dobrik and his crew. They're doing cool stunts and all this and that. And because of that, okay, boom, now I don't need to go talk to anyone for the rest of the day because I got my fix. I'm good. I feel like I was a part of something, right? And while this might sound ridiculous saying it out loud, like, what do you mean you didn't get a fix? It's through the internet. Hey, let's just be real. That's the reality in most cases. And it can even go to books as well. So let's say romance, for example. Let's say you really need to put yourself out there in the dating market and this and that. And let's say you actually, indulge in a lot of these romance books, right? This will essentially be your fix. It's kind of a cope in a way too, because you're like, oh, like, I'm going to talk to, I'm going to talk to some guys today, or I'm going to talk to some girls today. And then you kind of read the book, and it's kind of a cope, but to actually take action in what you're doing. But you read the book and you're like, you know what? I actually don't feel like talking to anyone today. I got my fix through the book. I got my stimulation for the day. I'm good. And essentially you can get caught in this dilemma to where you're living out your desire and your fantasy through the book, right? Through the content of the book, instead of actually experiencing it for yourself, and this right here is the most dangerous part, because I feel like, while yes, a lot of people genuinely love reading because they love reading, and I applaud that for sure. I love that. But I know like there's a little section of people who read because they're scared to actually do what they want to do in their life and to actually take action, and it sucks to see like, and it sucks to be like this because, we make, fun of a lot of people, right, who like, let's say they watch a lot of self-improvement videos, but they don't actually go and apply the advice. It's the same thing with books, essentially, the kind of like that ratio, that 1-to-1 ratio. And, it sucks that it's like that because obviously there's a lot of people who have a lot of potential in a lot of things, but, them reading books and especially about romance and in the context of love, they're essentially their actions get washed away because, they're using these books as their own, they're living out their whole thing in a book. And it sucks. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys stuck around to the very end, I do want to know exactly. Comment down below, genuinely. Let's have a genuine conversation about BookTok as a whole. What are your views on it? If you were a person that was in BookTok, how was your experience with it? If you're a person who's in BookTok, right, and they're really deep in it, let me know, like genuinely, let me know your perspective. Let me know your pros, cons of it, and let's just have a deep conversation about it. I'm genuinely interested. If you guys enjoyed this video, I do have another video I made on Wattpad, which is kind of similar to this, just the whole fan fiction community and just giving my thoughts on that whole community as a whole, because it was definitely an interesting deep dive into it. Thank you guys for watching this video yet again. I appreciate it. I will catch you guys in the next upload. Peace.